Hi guys, welcome to my presentation on generativity versus stagnation. I'm Molly Krugman and I interviewed my dad, who is Mike Krugman. So, generativity versus stagnation. What is generativity and what is stagnation? I pulled these definitions out of our book. So, generativity is the willingness to care about the people and things one has produced, as well as a commitment to protecting and enhancing the conditions of one's society. Adults in this stage are working to establish continuity between generations and are continuing to grow and expand in emotional depth and social roles. This can also include like legacies, what people describe as a legacy. It can be material or non material. Stagnation, the lack of psychological growth, which includes being self centered, seeking pleasure at the expense of others, having difficulty seeing beyond one's own needs, adults in middle adulthood who cannot look beyond their own emotional needs may be in stagnation, which can affect their development in older age, and Erickson's final stage of integrity versus despair. So, we're going to talk about some important life experiences that my dad went through. So, one of the first big life experiences was getting divorced. He married quite young and did not stay married very long. And he divorced his first wife and then swore he was never getting married again. Well, that didn't last long. He got married to my mom. They got married in their late 30s and did not want kids at that time. And then they had kids and had kids. He was 50 when they had kids, and that was an important thing in their life because they had to go through IVF to conceive my brother and I. They went through multiple rounds of IVF and were essentially told they could never have children or get pregnant. So once they did get pregnant, it was a huge accomplishment. Unfortunately, after they had kids, my mother suffered from postpartum depression and some other health issues that prevented her from caring for my brother and I. So at this time, my dad decided to retire and become a full time parent, which took a lot of strain on the family ties because he really did enjoy what he did for work, and he's somebody who always has to keep busy and likes to build things. And then after he retired, my dad got diagnosed with skin cancer, which was huge for him because he lost his brother, his mother, and his father from skin cancer, and both he and his surviving brother have skin cancer, pretty severe form. Some life experiences that were also big to my dad is he worked for BOEC, which was a disabled ski company, and he worked for the fire department on their board of directors for our town, and then he was a range safety officer at the gun range. An important thing that I learned was 1 in every 2 men and 1 in every 3 women in the United States will be diagnosed with skin cancer in their lifetime. And then practices of generativity can include the roles of each member of the household plays or the traditions that are carried out as societies transition politically that may also have an impact on how generativity changes. So I have another quote here. Generativity is a concern older adults direct towards continued well-being of future generations. Mentoring, parenting, teaching, and gifting are some actions that support their desire for futurity. So some of the challenges my dad faced in this life cycle was having children. While it was a big accomplishment, it was also very difficult financially. It took a lot of time and a lot of strain on him being a lone parent and taking care of my mother and dealing with my brother and I are twins. And we had a lot of health complications as young children, which took an immense strain on him. This also created a lot of financial strain, being a single parent essentially, but not being able to work and having the medical bills of not only my mother, but my brother and I. And getting divorced took a huge strain on him financially because he ended up paying for that multiple years after the divorce happened. He also had shoulder surgery 3 times, none of which took a huge chunk out of his health, and he never recovered fully from that, so he's no longer able to do the things he used to do. He's also very far away from his family in Texas, which takes a huge strain because in his family they were very close and valued a lot of closeness, spending holidays together and seeing cousins, and he hasn't been able to do that. And then we have accomplishments, and then another quote: generativity can be as personal as childbearing or as broad as being involved in one's community or a part of large organizations. Generativity will be defined very differently by each individual. So I think some of the accomplishments that speak to generativity and my father was having kids, getting married. He was very, very involved in the community as my brother and I were growing up. While he didn't work, he volunteered at all the schools we attended, teaching typing or computer classes or just volunteering to help out in the classrooms. He also built a new home, and I think being able to pass that down to my brother and I, and even just teaching us how you can go from having nothing to building something on your own and being very, very proud of it is something he passed down. Oppression. So generativity is growing to become a more inclusive concept. It is still important to expand our theoretical understanding of generativity, especially as it relates to resilience among diverse populations. So my dad did not experience oppression directly, but saw it a lot throughout his work. During the phone company, a lot of individuals of different ethnicities or religions experienced a lot of oppression and didn't get chosen or sent out on jobs as much as like my dad would, who is a white male. And their jobs would also be kind of more of the crappy jobs out of what was assigned. He also worked for BOEC, where he saw a lot of individuals who have disabilities being treated unfairly, not being able to be allowed the same resources as individuals who don't have a disability. So he would stand up for individuals with disabilities, individuals of a different race and or social class. This is also something I would say that speaks to generativity, him passing down to my brother and I, is just don't judge a book by a cover, and just because somebody is different does not mean they're not entitled to the same things as you are. So we have the psychosocial crisis, which I would say is stagnation in this case. My dad experienced some diversity. They were older parents, which he says took a big toll because they didn't get to socialize with other parents and they weren't going through the same, I guess, phase as people would if they were having children in their 20s or 30s, which was the most common age that was having children in our area. While they were already settled down, other couples would be going out to dinner with their kids and having parties, and my parents were already older and did not attend. He also experienced the diversity of raising kids and his wife and being a single parent and not being able to go to functions at the school or take us to games or travel. He was also very financially stable by the time he had children, which was very isolating. He said a lot of other parents did not want to socialize with him and my mother due to the fact that they were not experiencing the same difficulties. Other parents were still in the process of either building or buying their own home when my parents were already settled down. Another thing that stuck out was we had 8 horses and 12 dogs. So there was a lot of responsibility, not only financially, but just taking care of all those animals all the time. Um, and then I have people for whom stagnation overwhelmed, generativity lacked care for others, focusing what care they might have on themselves and sometimes those closest to them, which speaks to the psychosocial crisis, which is generativity versus stagnation. And I would say my dad is more in the generativity. And finally, I have an additional theory that I picked, which is Bronfen Brenner's ecological model. This includes the individual, the mesosystem, the exosystem, and the macrosystem. I would say most of my dad's life was shaped by his microsystem, which consists of family, siblings, peer, school, and work. I would say most heavily by his family. Due to family struggles, he was no longer able to work and really see his peers or his siblings because there was so much responsibility in the home life that just wasn't an option for him. And the exosystem, parents, work environment, mass media, neighborhoods, and extended family. I would say he was influenced by this because his extended family, he wasn't able to see them as much, and this led to he was not present when his mother, father, or brother passed away, and he passed that lesson on to my brother and I that it is incredibly important to be involved in close family relations and keep your systems healthy. Be close to your family, see siblings, and it'll improve the system as it works outwards. I would say this ecological model speaks to generativity and stagnation as well, because in order to experience generativity, you want your microsystem and your mesosystem especially to be healthy and thriving, because generativity, part of that is doing things for others and leaving a so-called legacy behind, which is very difficult when you're not a part of the community or you're not experiencing fulfillment in your work life or your social life. I would say stagnation fits into this because without being able to see family, siblings, school, peers, you become very self-absorbed and you're only doing really stuff for yourself, and your social circle becomes very small or even just one person. So I think with my dad, it would have been very easy for him to fall into stagnation if he didn't work to be involved in my brother and I's life or get those jobs in the community, even though they weren't able to be a career position, he was still involved in it. I would say macro system would be the social conditions of just living in Breckenridge, and raising kids there was incredibly difficult as it's a ski town that is highly populated. So here are my references for my presentation. And thank you all for watching my presentation for this class.